Welcome back to the 2018 Canadian Indoor Singles Championships. I'm Jake Shuknook, and we are joining our feature match here between Linda Ning and Emma Boyd. They are 4 ends in so far. Linda was up 6-0 prior to this 4th end where Emma got on the scoreboard. Emma is the one that just delivered the jack. Battle of BC here. So after 4 ends, it is 6-2 for Linda Ning. So Emma is using the blue bowls and Linda is using the green ones. And as always, if you want to get in touch with us, reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter at BCB Bowls on Twitter and at BCB Official on Facebook. So Linda was 2-2 prior to the game this morning, and Emma was 4-0. We know that she lost her first game, so she's 4-1. I'm not quite sure how Linda did. We're still waiting on our chief scorer to update the web page with the scores, so I might go and do that now. Actually, welcome back, David.
No, thank you. Great lunch.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic lunch. Lunches here have been stellar.
Yeah, no, really good. And now I'm ready to go to sleep. I mean, commentate. So what's happening?
So Linda's off to an 8-2 start.
Oh, wow.
And Linda has the green bowls and Emma's got the blue ones. You were telling me earlier that Emma's actually a member of this club. Is Linda as well?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, and Linda's, I know for a fact, is bowling with Dreamline XGs. Her and her husband, I think, Ken, they've got the same colored bowls.
Ah, okay.
Identical sets of bowls.
Okay.
And I think the same size 3. What does... I think Emma uses Taylor Aces. I believe.
That could be right. That could be right.
Yeah, Emma's hit a bit of a speed bump, I think, and she'll just have to roll through it or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, fight your way through it is really all you can do.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder what Mr. Stevie Santana would say, as he's your coach, so I'm curious what he would say if you were here to sort of power through that.
Yeah. I find it, I don't know if it's the same for every bowler, but when it can happen in the middle of a game for me, and it's just that I guess I'm really not sure. It's more, it's not so much between my ears, although it's always connected to between your ears, but something fundamental walks away on me, and I entirely lose my weight.
Okay.
And if I can ever figure that
what it is?
Yeah.
It's
I generally will bowl better in the first half of a like say a normal game, you know.
okay.
14-end game or something or whatever.
Yeah, that's interesting. In September when I was playing in our district playdowns for singles, I found that especially in the second day, I would be super consistent for 3, 4, 5, 6 ends in a row, and then I would lose it for 1 or 2. But then I'd find it again for 4, 5, 6 ends in a row, and then lose it for another 1 or 2, and then back. And that's never really happened to me. Normally, I either just feel good the entire game, or I don't the entire game. There's not very often that I can pick it up, lose it, pick it up, lose it several times throughout a game. It was a weird feeling.
I usually lose it, and it takes me the rest of the game. By the last end or whatever, I'm starting to get it back, and I don't know what it is. I have no idea.
That's why I wish that I could have a coach at every game I play at, just so that they can watch, because quite often it's something physical that they'll notice, like, oh, you're turning your hand over, you're stepping too far, or whatever it is. They'll be able to pinpoint it. Stuff like that you can't really notice of yourself.
Yeah, and what I've found too, though, is that I've been watching newer bowlers more, younger bowlers more. Oh, Emma's going through and she's missed. I found that it almost helps me, because I'm thinking, what are they doing wrong? Like they're consistently bowling narrow on their backhand. What are they doing wrong? And what I've found is they're usually aren't staying committed to the line, and they're not staying down on the line, and they're pulling up too quick.
Right.
And usually when you pull up, then you go to the side a little.
Yep.
And so I think that's kind of, it's a neat sort of thing that happens.
Alright, I'm being told that our volume is not quite where it needs to be.
Oh, are we talking too loud?
Well, I'm told we're talking too quiet. Need to speak up.
Oh, okay.
I will do our best to crank the sound. Let us know if that's any better.
Yeah. Actually, I might not have my mic in the right place either. So.
That could be it too.
Yeah.
Ah, Mr. Terry O'Neill, tuning in all the way from Nova Scotia. Nice to have you with us. Terry used to be on our board of directors. He was VP for a little while. Fantastic shot there by Linda.
Yeah.
My co-host is David Gerard, as he was asking who I'm commentating with. David's been here for past couple days and probably the next few.
Yeah, I'm the best bowler on the West Coast that's never won anything. Sorry.
You heard it here first. If you have any complaints, fly out here and tell them otherwise.
But, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Jake, I kind of
no worries.
messed you up there.
They are playing very short, which is kind of frustrating because their camera angle isn't quite set up for short ends. It's set up for mid to long. So you only just make out the jack and bull at the top of the screen there.
Yeah, Linda's just promoted hers.
Very consistent bowls.
Yeah.
Well, if you're saying that you're the best bowler that's never won anything in the West, Terry's saying the same for him in the East. So.
Oh. We could be fast friends then, Terry.
You'll have to have a battle.
Yeah, battle.
Fly somewhere neutral.
Yeah. I think this summer I bowled 2 tournaments, the whole summer. One was the provincial singles. Didn't do that well in that. It was on greens that weren't really that good. Let's put it that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's not my excuse for doing so poorly. And what about yourself? Did you bowl much this summer?
No, I played in 2 tournaments, which is double what I did last year, I guess, technically. I always play in WOBA, the WOBA. It's a 3-day men's tournament in Ontario. It's held at the Heritage Lawn Bowling Club in Kitchener. Really, really fun event. I really enjoy that. I think I'll always book off work to go and play in that. It's, I think, the 3rd week of July, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and you sign up as a team of 4 and you play 4s, triples, and singles. That's how your team breaks down. Really good prize money, really good competition, and the greens are pretty good. So it's a lot of fun. I've done that for the past couple of years, and then I actually entered our district singles this year for the first time in a long, long time. So that was entertaining, I guess is the best word for it, for how not good I am, and yet somehow I still snuck away with the win on that out of, I want to say, 10 or 12 guys. I can't remember how many, but it was very clear how out of game shape form, I guess, I was compared to previous years. Just remembering the days back when I was playing a lot, there were so many shots that I could just make without thinking about it. And then playing this year, it was very apparent that, wow, I can't make those anymore. I need to actually practice a little bit and put some time in. So
big struggle. Yeah.
But the plan next year is to play a little bit more than I did this year and slowly get back into more than 1 tournament a year.
Yeah. I found when you play so seldom, it's kind of tough.
Yep. Kind of tough is a good word for it.
But singles isn't, well, it may be hard to play as well as you want, but singles, you don't have all the logistics of trying to get a team together and all that kind of stuff, which helps me. So yeah, Linda's. You think she's holding 2 there?
Yeah, I'd say she's holding 2. She's on the mat here, ready to deliver her.
No, she's putting a back ball
in. Probably a good idea, just the way that things are angled. I would expect Emma to play some weight at that. And we saw Emma throw some weight the last end as well, so. Now that Linda has the back covered, Linda has the back covered. I think Emma's going to have to play down with very more controlled weight. Just a couple feet through the head, try to...
Excuse me, sorry.
On her forehand, to try to come down and just sort of bump that bowl and follow through a bit. I would not expect a full drive here. I think that's what she was going for, just got outside the line. That's about the weight I would have expected, just a few feet past, but enough to make contact and follow through. So, well, that was a good line for a draw, right back on the center line. But
Yeah. Just too much weight.
so after 7 ends, it's looking like it's 10-2 for Linda, which means the set is just about out of reach for Emma. She'd have to get 2 perfect ends back to back.
Yeah, it's where you're almost, well, for me, if I'm in Emma's shoes, I'm almost already. You can't count yourself completely out, but at the same time, you got to be thinking about the next set.
Mm-hmm.
What am I gonna do, or what do I think I can do?
Right. So clearly Linda likes to play these short jacks. This is very short again.
Yep.
And a pretty good opening bowl, just behind.
Mm-hmm. What's up here is
On the rink next door, we have Pauline Wong against Liz Jones, and Pauline's up to a 7-1 lead after 5. And on the other side, looks like Jan Robinson against Rainbow Lung.
yeah.
So Rainbow's up 6-4 over Jan. So that's a really good opening bowl there from Emma. That's a good start to try to get that 4 that she needs.
Yeah.
But not surprisingly,
Yeah, Linda might
Linda's just right on it.
Yeah.
That's going to be very tough to get 4 now.
Mm-hmm.
Might force her to switch hands. Yep. On her backhand now.
It's close.
Definitely in the ballpark. This is very close. Wow. Beautiful bowl.
Mm-hmm.
Allowing 2. Almost the same bowl here from Linda. Just needs to roll hers over once to get shot.
Yeah. Or even pop Emma's out.
Mm-hmm. I think she's around the outside.
Yeah, just.
Really good effort. I really like that weight.
Mm-hmm.
So she's lying 2. Can she do the exact same bowl? I don't know if she sent it.
A little light, I think, yeah.
That's going to be tricky to get 4 out of that.
Mm-hmm. That's narrow.
It's narrow and not really anywhere near the head. So how can you draw up 4 out of this? I don't see any way of getting 4 out of this.
It'd be tough for sure.
Maybe a drive on her blue to collide, send that blue onto the back green and follow through, and try to grab the jack on your way through.
Maybe.
clearly just trying to draw here. Just crashing on her short bowl, so that should be, I believe, 2 to Emma to make it 10-4 going into the last end of the first set.
10-4, good buddy. I don't even know if they still have CB radios anymore.
Remember playing with those when I was a kid. So interesting thing here, now that Emma has the mat, and she's going to lose it next end because to start the next set, Linda will have the mat. So chance to try to change the length, I guess, but based off how Linda's been playing, you almost know that she's going to make it short again. So I would have been tempted actually to just
leave it
short and try to nail my weight for playing short, because you know that that's what's going to be happening an end from now anyway.
Yeah.
I suppose this is a good time for Emma to make sure she still has her weight for playing T to T.
Yeah, what's singles is a sort of a unique beast, I guess, because there's very few tournaments to play singles in, right? And also it quite often follows the set format. And it really, I think there really is a lot to the set format that I don't understand, right? Some of the strategies that you know, like, and a lot of it just comes up through conversation, like what we're doing right now. But you know, all the different scenarios. What do you do in this case?
Right.
What do you do in that case? Yeah.
That's one of the trickiest things about coaching. So I work with our coaching program quite a bit, and trying to coach players to become better competition players, tournament players. And there's so many different strategies that it's hard to coach or tell them what to do in like one sitting, one session. It's almost something that you need to do 3, 4, 5 years with someone to say, in this situation it's better to do A instead of B. In that situation, it's better to do Y instead of Z or whatever.
Right.
It's tricky because there's so many different scenarios with bowls that it's impossible to just sit down and say, here's what you need to do all the time.
Right. And it's repetition too. Probably even in the coaching part of it and the student part of it. That you just wait till it's second nature.
One of my favorite drills, and Terry, if you're still watching, you can attest to this, that I learned from Lachlan Tai, a coach down in Australia, is called the caterpillar drill, where you don't have a jack, you just roll a bowl, and then you next try to replicate it. And I find that to be just the greatest drill, because there's so many people who can't roll the same bowl twice. And I'm just thinking that's like where you need to start. Number one is just make sure you can actually roll the same bowl 4 times in a row, regardless of where it is, because if you can't do that, then that's an issue you need to fix right away with your delivery.
Yeah, I've tried the caterpillar drill. When I do it, looks like the head and the tail have been chopped off a lot of times, and or else the grenades hit it.
Yeah.
They've never been real successful, but yeah, it's a really good way of doing it. You're not worried about jacks or anything. You're just
make sure you can
same thing again.
Replicate. Yeah. So Emma did pick up one here to make it 10-5. That's the end to that set.
Yeah, on to set number 2.
So Terry's got a fun question here. Any thoughts of enlarging the field for outdoor singles? Interesting question. So this year was the first year of the change, where we capped it at 24 men, 24 women. Players are split into 4 pools of 6. That is such a interesting question. First off, I'm going to say I don't think there's going to be any changes for 2019 or 2020, because I believe the plan was to keep things in place for 3 years and then make bigger changes then. So I would expect it to be the same for this year and next year. But this is my personal opinion. I don't know if competition committee or the board or anybody else will agree with me on this, but I think 24 is actually the perfect number for it, based on the quality of players that we saw there. I noticed on the women's side, in particular, there was a few borderline players that may not have been the highest notch quality, and I'd be worried about expanding that any further. And I don't think it makes sense to have more men than women, like having a pool of 30 men and only 24 women. That doesn't really make much sense. I'd like to keep it even as best as possible. Just my opinion. I don't know whether other people agree with me on that, but and even for the men, I think once we got down to 23, 24, the quality started to decline a little bit as well. So I'd be worried about opening it up to 30, 36, 42, however many people you want to have, about the quality of play, just because what I saw this year was, for the most part, absolutely outstanding. The people who were there who were playing, it was really, really high caliber bowls, which was great. And there weren't many blowouts. I didn't see too many like 21-0 games. That didn't happen as much as in previous years when it was open and you had 36 local bowlers who live around the club. There were a lot of games that were massive blowouts because the people who were entering weren't exactly national championship caliber players entering. So my personal opinion on this would be no. I don't think enlarging the field for the outdoor singles is really in the best interest of making that event better. My personal thoughts on that is just to keep it as is, just because the people who enter it or who got there are sort of the best of the best, and that's really what you want.
Yeah, well, this year was the first year in a long time. I think they went from an open format to
capping it.
Capping it, and that's one part of the equation, I guess. What I liked about the open is that gave chance for people like myself to actually bowl in a national event. So that was kind of neat that way. But if you are going to have if you want to get a larger amount of people involved in the actual event, it would be probably what we were talking about earlier, a double knockout sort of thing, which some people don't want to travel all that way to
play 2 games at home. Yeah.
So that's a good question though, really good question.
I think it would be different, maybe, if the winner of our outdoor singles didn't go on to Champion of Champions, because the fact that we are sending someone to represent Canada, to represent our country, to ideally be the best of the best, you really want that to be a top-notch bowler. And not that a new player wouldn't be, but if I'm going to pick on 2017 as an example, there were a couple of first-year bowlers there, and I'm just thinking, if they did end up winning, they might not do so well in Australia at Champion of Champions, given that it's their first year of play.
Right. But one thing that you might find interesting is, because I know them, the gold and silver medalists are both fourth and third year bowlers.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. And so, and they're both good bowlers, I believe.
Yep. They both put on
really good show.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's a tough one. We should have like what they have in Australia. Well, we couldn't get the number of people for it, but like just have some more of a big open competition. It's like not really the national title. Yeah. It could be people coming up from the States.
Yeah. The Canadian Open. They've got the U.S. Open, the Australian Open, and the Canadian Open.
If we have the Canadian Open, can we have it at Glen Abbey? Oh, right, that's the other sport.
Yeah. So Terry's thought here was that 32 men, 32 women, we could then have 4 groups of 8, because that way you get 7-game guarantee, which might get some of the better players willing to travel, because they might not want to travel for 5-game guarantee, because right now with groups of 6 you only play 5 games, whereas if there's a group of 8 you get to play 7. That's interesting too, because even with 24, technically you could still have 3 groups of 8. It was just getting down to playoffs would be kind of funky after that. But
Yeah, because you'd have 3. Well, you'd have to have
yeah,
an extra coming from somewhere,
Yeah.
or 2 extras.
2 extras coming from somewhere. But yeah, that would get 2 more games. That would also make it a slightly longer event. But it's also, I guess I'm just worried about where the other 8 men and 8 women are coming from and their caliber of play.
Yeah.
Just because to make a meaningful competition, you don't really want any blowouts. And I was quite happy this year to not see many of those.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is. So they're in the second end.
Did Linda get 1 or 2 there?
I'm not sure. I believe it's. Well, I guess we'll see when.
Yeah, when Nick gets down there to fix the board. I saw her kick out 1, so it's 1 for sure. But
Hey, you know everyone's names.
well,
I know Nick's name too.
Yeah, hey, there you go.
But there we go. 1.
Yeah, that's just 1.
And Nick is Liz's husband, I believe.
Yes. And Liz is on the rink to our right here playing against Pauline Wong. It's currently 11-3 for Pauline over Liz, going into the last end of the first set. And on the other side, Jan Robinson's up 9-6 over Rainbow Lung, also going into the last end of the first set. Well, that's an interesting point there, Terry. He's saying, maybe if we had bigger field, some of the hotshot national team players will show up. I would argue that this year was probably one of the best fields for that, whether you talk about national team members or ex-national team members or people who are, in the pool trying to get on the national team. Based off of who was there, I would argue that's probably the best turnout you're going to get, just because when you're on the national team and you have to take time off for major games, training camps, what have you, you don't really have a whole lot of time off to take off for anything else anyway. So especially this year with Commonwealth Games, that was like a month. Anybody who went to the Wales International warm-up event, as well as NAC, most people can't really take off any more time than that. So the people who were there in Regina, I would argue, is probably about as many from our national team that you're going to get in any given year, just because they can't really get too much more time off. So it might be, a few different people here and there, but you're never going to get the whole team showing up just because they can't get time off. They already have to take off a month or 2 at a time for everything else.
Yeah, and I think part of the problem too is our country is just a little bit too big, yeah, for that kind of stuff. Because when you think about the amount of travel that you have to put into it and stuff like that to go, so it makes it okay. What do you do? There could be one thought could be, let's have the nationals in Ontario every year, or every year for a decade, or however they want to do it, right? And then people know where they're going to be traveling to, and that kind of stuff.
That's actually very interesting. So speaking at the national level, every sport either has or will have to go through a competition review, which we finished ours last year. And what that means is you need to work with some experts to actually go through and analyze your competitions, your championships, and see if they're doing what they're meant to be doing. And so seeing what some other sports are doing, I think it's Speed Skate Canada, they modified their championships, so they now have things split right down the middle. So they have a championship for the West and a championship for the East, and they never actually meet. So Manitoba, Alberta, Saskatchewan, BC play in the West Championship, and then Ontario and East play in the East Championship, and they just have 2 championships, and that's what it is. They don't actually have a national championship anymore. They have one for the East, one for the West, and that way it's easier on travel for everyone. And one of the suggestions that we had from Mackie, who used to be our high performance director before he left, was to actually just have all of our championships in Ontario, because I think that's what they do for, I'm not sure if it's soccer or what sport he was referencing, but to just have it in Ontario, because 1, it makes sense because it's in the center, but then 2, he said for us it's unique because since Ontario has the most players anyway, then you're already catering to half of your membership in the first place. But if it is in Ontario, we do get bigger turnout, and we know that because when we have championships out west, using last year in BC as an example, you don't get PEI showing up. New Brunswick doesn't usually send a full team. Quebec doesn't always send a full team. But when it's in Ontario, that's a much closer travel, flight time, whatever. So that I like that idea. I also don't like it, though, just because the quality of greens in Ontario aren't usually that great, and clubs aren't big enough to host it year in, year out for, a decade straight. So I like the idea of going from province to province. I was a big fan the past 3 years being in Edmonton at their 4-green facility, being at Wanda Fuca at that 4-green facility, and then being at Regina at that 4-green facility. It was really cool to see all 3 of those because we only have 3 4-green facilities, so I really like that. But I like that it bounces around, but I also see that it would make a lot of sense to just have it in one place for a set number of years.
Yeah, and I just, like, it's not like I want it to be in Ontario because I'm here. But it's got to be what makes sense, and I'm kind of sort of a little unsure as to what would work and what couldn't work, and I know what my thought was do you think that they would have had more national team members at the Nationals if it was held in Eastern Canada? Like, if it was a larger number of the senior bowlers and that kind of stuff, are they in from the East?
Actually, surprisingly, I wouldn't say that, no. I'd say there's actually a pretty good split right across the country. I guess this year more from the East we're missing than from the West. But I really don't think that if it had been in the East that there would have been more showing up. I think it still would have been about the same. That is actually an interesting point, though, just the fact that if you look at our national team and development squad, youth development squad, really good representation across the country. It's not as though all 10 athletes are all from Ontario or 8 out of 10 are from BC or whatever. There's actually some from pretty much every province, which is, I think, really, really neat.
Yeah, it is. It's really good.
So getting back to the game at hand here, all tied up at 1 in this second set, playing the third end. Love the questions, comments, discussion there, Terry, talking about the singles and national championships. It's always a fun topic to talk about.
Yeah, well, for sure.
So it looks like Linda might be struggling at this slightly longer length. She was on fire with the short jacks in the first set, so now that Emma stretched it out, based on that first bowl being, 4 feet short? 5 feet short?
5. Yeah.
And Emma's getting them closer. I love to see that Linda's sticking with the same hand.
Yeah.
Even earlier today and yesterday, I saw so many people switch hands quickly, and that's, I don't want to say a rookie move, but if you're an experienced singles player, you quickly learn that you don't need to switch hands very often, and quite often you can draw around a bowl or inside a bowl, and you just pick a hand and master it. There's few times when you'll actually need to switch a hand. And so seeing Linda, even though she crashed onto Emma's bowl, it was counting anyway. Makes me happy to see that. That, to me, that shows the sign of an experienced player, that you're not flip-flopping hands every bowl.
Right. Another nice bowl.
Another great bowl from Emma. She's coming alive here.
Yeah, I noticed that in our provincials. There's one fella that older and well-seasoned, well-experienced, bowled. I think it was his backhand the entire tournament.
Wow.
Other than the odd shot that that you have no choice. And so he would still come in if his opponent's sitting 1 say a foot from the jack or something like that, and it's in his draw line, he'll still,
She'll just plow through it.
yeah,
Hmm.
or
Or
just
in and around.
draw
Yeah.
into it,
Yeah.
yeah. And he did really well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And some people, I haven't, for me, it's not necessarily the case, but some people are much better at their forehand than they are at their backhand, or vice versa.
Right.
And if they are, they should
Probably
kind of
play
stick with
that.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And use your practice time to.
I was just going to touch on that because when I was playing in that one tournament I play in every year, Wolba, one of the players there was telling me that he was keeping track of stats for the first game to see if he was better on his forehand or his backhand, and I just wanted to smack him because I know him well, he's a friend of mine,
Yeah.
but I wanted to smack him to say, you should be doing that in practice, you shouldn't be doing that in the middle of a tournament to find out which hand is better, you should know that going in, and then
Right.
only play that hand because you know that going in. That's not something you should find out
Yeah,
second game.
Yeah, you know what you can trust.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting.
As tedious as it is to keep track of stats, how many bowls are within a mat length of what you wanted, I find that to be really super useful. Not that I ever want to keep track of stats during a game. If someone else can do it, I'm super happy about it. But I find it really nice to be able to look afterwards and say, you know, I made 32% of my shots versus 70% of my shots on the other hand, or whatever. It's
Right.
nice to actually have a number instead of just a feeling, because after the game, you know, you can say you felt you played really well, but
Mhm.
it's nice to have the numbers to back it up to actually say, wow.
Yeah. My problem is I'm too lazy to to actually do all that. If you know what I mean, it's like.
You and me both.
And like, when you practice, do you want to run yourself through the ringer and really be tense and trying to whatever hyper focus on something,
Mm-hmm.
or do you want to just be loose and just get into a groove? And that's what I like to do sometimes. Just
Get
Yeah.
loose and get into a groove.
yeah, and just you have an objective, but you're not too as focused on
Mm-hmm.
examining the results and all that kind of stuff. I don't know.
Yeah, I guess I'm sort of
Like-
both and, I guess.
Yeah, and I like to make my own exercises up
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because sometimes they make more sense for me, or I enjoy it, that sort of thing.
When I do practice, which I did a couple times this year actually,
Mhm.
quite often I'll just set 30 minutes of actually focusing to keeping track of stats on specific things that I want to do. But then after those 30 minutes are up, then I'll sort of loosen up, relax, and just sort of roll
Yeah.
balls at whatever else I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Terry's saying that you must record and practice and be very
Yeah.
hard on yourself. It's the only way. And getting to that, those 30 minutes when I do really focus and keep track of stats, it lets me show that I'm making progress
Right.
on,
Right.
when I first started practicing at the start of the year, I was only making, I don't know, like 10% of my drives. But then by the end of the year, I was up to 25 or whatever the number was. I don't remember. It wasn't much because I didn't practice much, but it showed that there was progress being made instead of just a feel, which
Right. Yeah, I understand that whole the whole concept. I think too, well, I think that some of the practices, some of the things that you do, I think. Here's the question I have. Do you want to make it so difficult you can't do it and beat yourself up about it? Or do you want to do something that's, I wouldn't say easily achievable, but something that's easier to achieve and make yourself feel good about having achieved it?
I think for me, I would rather set something that's really hard
Mm-hmm.
because then it's a bigger feeling of satisfaction when you've done it, and I feel it's something you have to work towards. Whereas if there's something that's slightly easier that you can achieve, I feel like I'm not getting as much out of it. Whereas the thing that's really hard, it's going to take me a while to get there, but once I get there, I feel more proud of it. I feel
Right.
feel better, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a matter of setting bars, I guess, and how high you set them. Yeah.
But I guess I sort of get your point though, and the fact that you said setting bars makes me think of high jump. Like you're not
Yeah.
just going to set the bar at 5 meters and expect to do it on your first try. You know, you sort of have to set it low and work your way up.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh,
and I think, yeah, well, I guess it depends on the person too.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a lot of psychology involved in sports, I'm sure, and
Mhm. That's
I even heard there's coaches involved in sports.
That's something that I think we need more of, not just coaches, but also sport psychologists. A lot of this game is mental, and I watched a lot of the games, the Commonwealth Games, and I was just thinking to myself that a lot of our players would benefit, I think, more from a sports psychologist than, not necessarily that they wouldn't benefit from a coach, but I think it would have a bigger impact right away,
Mm-hmm.
just because it is so easy to get lost inside your own head.
Oh yeah, for sure. So, is it kind of a standard, where at least where you are in Ontario, um, for people to have coaches?
I wish.
That's the other thing, right?
Yeah, so I know that at the Heritage Club Kitchener there, that's where Daryl Fitzgerald is a member, and he's actually one of our national team coaches. He coaches
Mhm.
the youth and development squad, so he does quite a bit of coaching at the club as well. So the members of that club are very fortunate that he helps out with so many people. And I know
Mhm.
that there are a few around the Toronto area as well, but I definitely wouldn't say it's a standard. There's 118 clubs in Ontario, and if half of them have coaches, that's one thing. But if half of them actually use said coaches, that's quite another.
Mhm.
I know that they run coach clinics and coach workshops, and they have coaches, but I don't think that they actually use them. I used to live in southwestern Ontario and played in 50, 60 tournaments every summer because there's that many going on, and I would be surprised if more than two of the people I played against actually used a coach regularly. So
Right.
of the competition players, the tournament players, definitely not the norm, although I would argue strongly that it should be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe that's why I haven't made any progress because I've never had a coach.
When I first started for Bulls Canada, Daryl sent me an email because he was looking at expanding his coaching profile at the time. This was, I don't know, 3 years ago.
Mhm.
And he was asking me to just sort of answer a few questions about coaching. Do you have a coach? If not, why? Why not? And stuff like that. And so I had to seriously sit down and think about that. Why don't I have a coach? And I guess the only good answer I had was that there wasn't someone readily available that I was willing to be coached by, just because where I was at the time, really, there weren't any coaches and there weren't really any good players either. So
Mhm.
it's one thing to be coached by someone who knows what they're doing, but it's another to be coached by someone who's, I don't want to say not competent, but just not as experienced.
Yeah. And like any sport, just because you're a good player doesn't mean you're a good coach either.
Yes, exactly.
You know.
Exactly.
So what's happening here? They got it really.
Yeah, we're all tied up at 3, and
They're
then
not
it's-
missing the green at all. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, look at that, almost a perfect line. Curious if Nick saw that, but he just dropped something on the green. Yeah, pen lid, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, there it is, and got it now. What I really like about this format here is that you go on as soon as the rink's done.
Yeah.
And even if we didn't have that, I'm seeing Mike sitting in front of us here. Not that he's on this rink next, I don't think anyway, but not that this would really be an issue here, but if this were at a grass green, you could actually sit down and watch the rink, the people play in front of you, and find out where the lines are, what the
Yeah.
intricacies are of the rink beforehand, and sort of study up a little bit.
Mhm. I wonder how this worked out yesterday. At the end of the day, after having this system or setup where once one team's finished with the rink, whoever's supposed to be bowling on it next are welcome to
get going.
To get going right away. Did it end up saving time in the end yesterday?
Well, that's an interesting question. So the last game finished around 7:10, 7:15, something like that. So technically that is longer than it has been in previous years, but we're also playing an extra game per day.
Right.
Last year it was only 4 games every day. This year it's 5. So it cuts out a full day from the event,
right?
Which is one thing. And I don't think it's that unreasonable to expect people to be here till 7 at night.
No.
When you're starting at 9 a.m., that's 10 hours. So, like, yeah, it's a long day, but you have massive breaks between games of at least an hour, sometimes 2.
Right.
So, yeah, it makes for very long days, but it's only a, 4-day competition? Is that what it is? So
I think so.
I'm trying to think, when did we even start here?
5-day.
Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Yeah, 5 days if you're in the final, yeah. So, yeah, I guess it did. It saves time by cutting out a day, but in terms of length of day, it's longer days.
Right. But yeah, longer days in general. I guess I was just kind of looking at the fact that we must be saving time somewhere, because by the end of the day, like, there will be some people that have finished almost an entire game ahead of the others, because once that rink has been opened up,
right,
then the other team comes on, sort of thing.
And it really does make a difference too, because the women only have 10, so that means there's one rink that's just not being played.
Right.
Which, looking around at the moment, I think is rink 1 right now. Which means technically the men could get going on one whenever, but it just doesn't really make sense for them to do that, because then that rink is just going to be a full round ahead of everything else. And
right.
Just going to get held up at some point anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, there wasn't too much of a backlog yesterday. I noticed for the outdoor singles that just everything went wrong there, just because we had 4.5-hour games. But for this, some of the games did take an extra 20-30 minutes, but quite often the game that followed them would be relatively quick, or at least the same as everything else. So nothing was really held up too much.
Yeah. Well, it looks like the second set's much closer between Linda and Emma. Oh, there's a measurement.
And as always, if you want to get in touch with us, reach out to us on Facebook or Twitter, at BCB Bowls on Twitter, and at BCB Official on Facebook. Would love to hear from you. David's still...
I'm still here somewhere.
Still waiting for the heckles. Haven't had any of those yet.
Every once in a while, someone flicks me in the back of the head when they walk by, but other than that, they've learned to be silent.
Physical abuse.
Yeah.
Just no verbal abuse.
Well, it looks like Claire is ahead of Jenny 11-4 after 8 ends first set. So Claire's got that one in hand. Unless it's 14 for... No, it's 4 for Jenny.
And on the rink beside, Josephine Lee is up 4-3 over Betty Van Wallingham.
Oh, and...
Rink to our right has Jan Robinson up 10-0 over Liz. Wow.
Yeah.
Big thanks to our partners and sponsors, the Government of Canada through Sport Canada, the Coaching Association of Canada, and Kukri, our official clothing supplier.
That's a button I have to push every once in a while.
If I were smart, I would just record it and then just hit play. Wouldn't have to say it so many times. Can you expand a little more, Terry? So he's asking, do you know what brands of bowls are the widest and narrowest being played in this tourney? I have Arrow Grooves. Would they play there?
Yes, they would play.
How do Arrow Grooves relate to other stuff? I'm not too familiar with the
Arrow Grooves, I believe, I had that chart up, but I think they're close to the Henselite Tigers. Oh, I don't have Arrow on this.
Close to Tigers. So is that a wider bowl then?
Wider, yeah.
Wider bowl? Okay.
Yeah. And the Grooves are one of the wider Arrow bowls as far as I know. So yeah, you could play. You have to be really careful on the ditch sides. As long as you got your aim right and everything, it's not a problem. And I know a couple of people that do bowl with arrows, and Michael Leung, and he's been to the Canadians before and stuff like that, and his wife Margot. They bowl the Grooves, and in fact we bowled against them last Monday, and they worked really well. And Michael said that the thing is, you just have to trust that the bowl will come back. So you have to throw it out there and trust it'll come back, and if you do that, it's not a problem.
Apparently Alex Marshall uses them at the indoors in the UK, so...
Yeah, and I don't know if we mentioned it yesterday or if I was talking to someone else or if it was on air, that I met Dawes. His last name's Dawes. Anyhow, he won the World Indoor Singles, I think, in 2017. I met his brother. He came here and he was bowling here and he was doing so well. And I asked him about it, and he said, "I'm not as good as my brother." And I asked him who his brother was, and found out he was world champion. But those guys over there, and I don't know how quick their greens run, but they use Tigers. So the Henselite Tigers. So they've got a nice, good draw to them. And there's a few people here that use them.
And Terry O'Neill is going to fact check you and say that his first name was Mark. Mark Dawes, I guess.
Yes, thank you.
And Rob Gallipo is just a second too late, but he's also saying Mark Dawes. So we have a couple of fact checkers.
Well, do you guys know Mark Dawes' brother's name?
Ooh, that's the real question. Mark Dawes' brother's name. Now the even better question is, would you be able to tell them if they're right or wrong?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I think. But yeah, it was funny because his brother was here with his girlfriend doing what do you call that? A work thing, right?
Okay.
Work exchange or something like that.
Right.
And so that was really interesting. But this guy could throw balls too.
Terry says no, but he's not as good anyway, so let's go with his name. But then Rob's saying, yeah, his name is Mr. Dawes.
Thanks, Rob. You say it was Rob or Eric?
Rob Gallipo.
Hi, Rob.
Yeah.
Long time no see.
So we got a listener, I'm guessing, unless he's just commenting on our Facebook post and not listening, but Dwayne is saying, sorry I may have missed it, but why only 10 women's team while there are 10 for the men? Thanks. The reason for that is actually just sheer lack of entries. So I went around asking every province, hey, you're sending any women? And majority of them said no. And our conditions of play cap it at 4 per province. So there are 4 BC entrants, and I want to say 3 from Alberta. But there's also another stipulation in our conditions of play saying that it needs to be an even draw, which I absolutely butchered last year or the year before, and ended up being odd and was awful. But so this year we capped it at 10. I'm sure I could have filled it to 11, but it just doesn't make sense to have buys when you don't need to. So yeah, there's 10 just because lack of interest or lack of people willing to travel and come and compete here.
Yeah, and I think I mean you'll always get a lot of enough people in province that are willing to bowl in it, but it's really difficult to say to someone who's a really good bowler that's never bowled on a surface like this to come and expose themselves to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They may not want to. Yeah, others will take it as a great challenge, I'm sure, but
Mm-hmm.
so that's part of it.
So,
And expense. I mean, it's not
yeah.
cheap.
Yep. That too. So, Rob is saying that Eric's here with him too, but good to hear your voice. So you do have a following. We'll have to get them out here for your next game that you mark.
Yay. Well, actually, I don't know if I told this to you, Jake, or not, but I was marking a game yesterday afternoon between commentating, and John Bjornson was one of the contestants, and we're at the far end, last end, coming back, and John rolled the last ball, and I walked back down with him, and he said, I said, Rob, or I said, John, look at all those people up there. He goes, yeah, and I said, they all came to watch me mark. But as Eric and Rob know, we got lousy markers out here, so. You got to have a laugh once in a while.
So I believe Emma just picked up one there, which would make it 5-3, playing end number 6. Sorry, after 6. This would be number 7.
Yeah, Linda is, I see her as one of the people that's knocking on the door sort of thing, eh? She's got really good skills and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I know she did well in some event this summer, but yeah, she's always there. She's not necessarily the champion, but she's usually, second or third in a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So. Who else is up and coming? I don't know.
Nick, can you move to the left a little bit? Awesome, thank you. There we go. Beautiful.
I'll tell you, those stubble jumpers, you gotta train them how to stay out of the way.
Just one more complexity to marking. I might have to include that with the marker training we were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
There's
yeah.
a marker training resource that you can train people how to be markers, but I don't think it has anything in there but when you're on TV, so I'll have to add a clause. And
yeah, we had earlier on, we had Michael was marking on this rink, and it was his first time ever. I told him about the cameras, and then he just about lost it there. But he did really well.
So Rob's saying that the PIBC is awesome. We love coming out to Vancouver and playing. Markers are always appreciated with a smiley emoji.
Oh, thanks.
So Nick's just clarified there. It's 2 for Linda at the moment. She's using those green bulls.
Yeah. Yeah, they must each have one left because there's nothing on the bank there. So.
And Emma walked away right away.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Yikes.
Yeah, she's.
That's a whoops.
Yeah.
Slipped out of the hand probably.
Now Linda's got to get this in here for her own sake.
That's a beautiful bowl.
Yeah.
That's good for 3.
Good ball. And both of them had the green really well there.
Mm-hmm. Now, assuming that I've been up to date with the score, that should give Linda a 1-point lead, but that's assuming that Emma only got 1 last end and not 2.
Right.
We shall
Oh yeah, Linda's.
find out. Yeah, just clarifying with Nick what the score is or
I
should
think
be.
I think I heard her say, "Smarten up, Nick."
As only Linda would say.
No, actually, Linda has very good manners. Not like me.
Big thanks to George Cubis and all the umpires out here. They've been doing a stellar job.
Yeah.
Same with all the
for sure.
markers.
The gals in the kitchen.
Oh, yes. Yes. Kitchen, lunch has been great every day.
Yeah, really good.
Cannot complain at all. So if you're ever here at the PIBC, definitely worth your while if you can. Out in Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
Linda's back to playing super short, so this is
Yeah.
going to be just barely at the top of the screen once I flip-flop the cameras here. And waiting for Nick to just finish up with the scoreboard. And yep, 6-5 is what the actual score is,
Yeah,
so we're
after
doing okay.
7. Yeah.
So yeah, you can just barely see the jack at the top of the screen.
Oh, Emma's right on her bowl, I think.
Just
just
about.
missed.
That just missed. Probably still shot.
Mm-hmm.
So I noticed that Linda's wearing, I believe they're Asics shoes.
Yeah, I think so.
I have a pair that has a very different bottom, but they're big down in Australia and super flat. Don't have to worry about any grip or anything because there's nothing on them. And for the first time ever this year when I was playing, I found I actually was slipping on the mat because the mats that they were using at whatever club I was playing at had a bit of a, I don't know, rubbery base to it, I guess. And so when I was standing on it, since the bottom of the shoes have absolutely no grip whatsoever, I was actually slipping off the mat, and I really wanted them to flip the mat over, and so every time I got the mat, I would make it the other way, so there's some grippy stuff on top. But whoever I was playing would always have it the other way, so whenever they had the mat, I was slipping on the mat every time I delivered the bowl, which was kind of a infuriating way to play, just because I had to be conscious of which way the mat was every time I stepped on, just to make sure I was almost sort of like stepping differently so I wasn't slipping on the mat. So that's it's making me second guess those shoes now, and here that's not an issue as the mats are super grippy. There's nothing on them. It's not just rubber.
Yeah. Linda delivered a really nice bowl just behind the jack, and now Emma's coming, following her bowl down, and
just inside.
Yeah. But that puts her in a good position if she can trail the jack a little sideways, depending on what Linda does here.
That's a good point. Terry saying, couldn't you just flip the mat? Yes, and I did for a little while, but it started to tick off the other player as well because
they had to flip it back.
They wanted to flip it back, but then they also said, I put it this way, leave it this way, and I'm not the type that's going to call an umpire for really any reason because I just don't care enough, to be honest. So if it were a international event or national event, I'd probably make a bigger deal of it, but at a local club, I'm not going to cause a fuss over flipping a mat upside down or right side up. But yeah, that is something I probably could have done, and just kept flipping it every time, but eventually I just got tired of it, so left it as was.
Yeah, what I ended up using for bowling, for bowls, the shoes were, what do you call those? Skechers.
Ah.
And they're, I think the Burst is the type, and they had these little nubs on the bottom, not very big, and so I just cut them off with a box cutter sort of thing, and then sanded them flat, and that's what I use. And they have really soft soles, and even the whole thing is soft, and which I find is kind of nice, but they don't have a lot for support.
Right.
So.
Right. Support is kind of a big deal because you're on your feet for. It's a long day when you're playing a tournament, and if you're in a week-long tournament, it's a lot of days.
Emma's just rolled her last bowl. It's close, I think. It's close.
Ooh, got it, but don't think that's enough.
Yes.
From here, it still looks like it's Linda, but They're both going to take a look down there. It must be close.
Oh, it's Emma's.
Emma did get it. Wow.
Yeah.
Tie things up at 6 going into the last end of the second set.
Yeah.
Which means that they cannot tie the set. Someone's going to be a winner, someone's going to be a loser.
Yeah.
Right on the tee.
Yeah, this is where Emma's got to really knuckle down.
And so she's playing a longer one, which is to be expected. Linda's been absolutely stellar at the really short, so Emma's been stretching it out. Almost makes the tee not much of a factor.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, especially if you're right on top of it. But no, this is about 5 feet, 4.5 feet short of the tee. Ooh, that looks hot.
I was going to say it looks a little wide too, but it will come back. It's just, you're right, I think it's just the pace.
And you're right, it was a little wide.
A little bit.
And those are aces, I think, if I remember right.
Based on the dimple pattern, I think you're right. And this looks like a pretty good bowl here from Linda. I think she's going to be right on the tee.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty close. When I played at the NAC 4 years ago, played with Steve McCarahan and Dave Anderson in triples, and what they had me do, I was the lead, was bring the mat up 6 paces and then throw the jack to the tee, because that way it takes the tee out of the equation altogether. If it gets respot, it just goes right back to where it was, or you don't have to worry about putting a back ball to cover the tee because you're just playing to the jack anyway.
Right.
And I thought that was a really good way to play, because then you don't have to worry about it. It's just one less factor in the equation. You can actually just worry about rolling balls to the jack and just playing the usual game.
You don't have to, have I got the tee covered?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks like Linda's figuring out this length, and Emma's starting to struggle with her weight here. So this is sort of a tricky situation. Third bowl is arguably your most important one, says some people. You can argue that here or there, but the fact that she needs to count here in order to force a tiebreak, I'm not going to be happy with that.
And Linda has the last bowl as well.
Yep.
So that doesn't matter what you do, she'll have a chance to sort it out.
So if I was Linda, I'd probably be trying to get back to those 3 bowls, maybe get as close to the ditch as possible.
Yeah.
And it looks like she's maybe throwing an intentional guard or just trying to draw the head still. I'm not sure. Probably just drawing. Not sure if I really like that strategy, because the way it's so open right now, she got kind of fortunate for where it landed, but you don't really want to put one next to the jack and make that target big for Emma. Right now, there's lots of gaps.
Yeah. But for Linda to be in the count, she only has to be 2 meters.
Yeah.
2 and a bit. Yeah.
You can be pretty far away.
Yeah.
So I think the game next door is all wrapped up. Pauline Wong won in straight sets over Liz Jones.
Yeah.
And Emma's last Boyd here, Emma Boyd's last bowl here, wow, is very close. I think she's got the jack. It's a beautiful saving bowl, wow. Wow.
Yeah,
and just buried it behind.
Yeah.
That's got to be frustrating for Linda. What do you do now? So if you're Linda, do you switch hands, or do you still play that same hand that you've been playing?
I'd still play the same hand. She can. It's hard to tell from here, but I think she can even rest on her back bowl and still be shot.
Yeah, that could be an option too.
Yeah, or just
get the outside edge of Emma's bowl, knock her over.
Yeah, or even
Just
touch a jack. You never know.
Yeah.
But if you go the other way, she could run it into there. But remember, that's the side that's difficult.
And she hasn't played it really
No.
at all, so that I wouldn't expect her to switch hands.
But she'll probably turn around and make a liar out of us.
That's usually how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think I'd be very tempted to just come down and not much more than draw weight, really.
No. You don't want to be giving her more than one. And
well, I guess if you're conscious about plus minus, for me, I wouldn't even care if I'm going to give up 1. I might as well give up 4, just because it's going to go to a tiebreak anyway. So.
Yeah, but also I'm thinking that I believe Emma's holding 1 right now, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So if she comes onto Emma's bowl, she can't make it much worse than still being down 1, or she pushes it through, then she's up 2 or something like that. Yeah, she's coming that way.
Playing on her forehand still, and that's to be expected. That looks very tight.
Yeah.
That's interesting that Emma's actually using her finger measures here, so it's clearly not an obvious 1.
Right.
She might not even have shot then if she's using her fingers.
They'll call for an umpire. They should.
Probably.
Don't even measure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Emma knows the drill. I find that I find that the more you play the game, and when you have umpires, especially in singles, you just ask for the umpire. Unless it's really obvious that it isn't.
Yep.
Usually you have a good chance to go to the washroom really quick.
Yeah, take a break, go grab some water, whatever it is you need to do.
Give the umpires a job.
Yeah, that's actually one of my biggest pet peeves is so often in singles, or even just at a national championship when there's umpires there, people will stand around and look and look and look, and then finally someone gets down to measure, and then the other team's going to measure because they didn't like it, and then they call an umpire. And I'm just thinking, you just wasted like 20 minutes of nothing.
Yeah.
Should have just called an umpire from the get-go.
Yeah, just a shout out here to Charlie Taylor's mom and dad in Tisdale. Hello.
Tisdale.
Charlie's become a friend of mine through bowling and stuff. And
friend being an optimal word there.
Yeah, optimal. And I like to think I'm maybe a little part of the reason that he came this time, because I was giving him a swift you know what. So it's maybe someday we'll meet. And I don't know if it'll be in Tisdale, but anyhow, Charlie's he's putting his best foot forward, and he's doing as usual.
So you mean you're not going to fly out to Tisdale tomorrow?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
Where is Tisdale anyhow? Is that somewhere in Arizona?
Yeah, it sounds like it could be.
No, I'm sure it's Saskatchewan, but. Yeah, I have 2 sisters that live in Saskatoon. Say hi to them. My sister Jocelyn and my other sister Janice. Jocelyn is a bowler. She took the same stupid pill that I did, and she's now a bowler. Just kidding. I love the sport.
Wow.
Oh, it's over.
Yeah, so it was in fact 1 to Linda. So Linda actually
got
that straight sets. Wow, I thought that Emma had that for sure. So that's the game. 7-6 straight sets to Linden Inn. So we will take a short 5-10 minute break here. I'm not going to stream trial bowls. Gives us a chance to stretch our legs, and we'll be back live in about 10 minutes or so.
Yeah. Talk to you later.